Hey, welcome everybody to Voices Unchained. This is Conversations with the Formerly Incarcerated. I am Sean Kelly, Executive Director of Freedom Farms, and I'm here with my lovely guest today, Lindsey McNabb. Hey, Lindsey,
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you.
So we've been at the market now for a while, and
Yeah.
anyway, is there anything you want to share, Lindsey, just to start off with?
Um, Start off with just, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I love the Voices Unchained title in general
Yeah,
because that was actually something that came up this past week in the email that we sent out. Just, hey, listen to these voices unchained. And I think it's good for everybody, but especially for us who have been incarcerated before
yeah,
to not have to have a filter, I guess,
yeah.
I think
Your
that's
physical
important.
bodies were locked up, and and your voices were
Right,
locked up in
of
certain
course.
ways,
And,
right?
and so many of the voices still are locked up, and that's something that really is important to me right now to help the people that are still in there get their voices out. Because I have a lot of friends that are still in there that I met while in there.
Yeah.
And I communicate with them a lot. And yeah, they don't have an outlet at all, even through their families, if they have any family that's talking to them, right?
Yeah.
So,
So important to have a space where you can tell your story.
yep.
Yeah. And so what aspect of your story is alive right now that you want to share with
Oh
us here?
gosh. Part that's alive right now, I think, is just coming back into life with a whole new perspective.
Yeah.
I just passed my 6-month mark of being out of prison,
Congratulations.
so that's a big deal. Which
Huge.
it's flown by and gone slow. It's kind of weird how that can happen at
Yeah.
the same time, where it's like you look and you're like, oh wow, it's already June, but at the same time, it's like,
Like a lot has happened in that.
yeah, a
short
lot
amount of
has
time.
happened in that short amount of time. But also, I feel like I need to be doing more, and that's part of having that gap of time. I had to go to the IRS office yesterday to like deal with some stuff from taxes years past, and to me, the gap years in between what I had to just deal with and now aren't there. So to me, I'm like, oh, that was last year, but I'm in there talking to the people, and it's like 3 years, 4 years ago now. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
well, wait a minute, where is this gap of time? So, coming back into life after having that, what felt like just a hold.
Like a black hole.
Yeah, like just a huge pause. It's like I'm starting life from scratch, it feels like, and I've lost time that I can't get back, and I have to kind of let go of that, but it's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
Really hard to do that.
So there's a sense that you've lost time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like, yeah, I just can't, sometimes I can't wrap my head around that I was put away basically for that long, and everything else kept going on out here.
Yeah.
But not there for me.
And it was like one day. So can you describe
Yeah.
just that moment for us?
Well, yeah. So first of all, I had zero. I've never had any sort of criminal involvement in my life aside from this one incident. I had no idea that I had a warrant out for my arrest. So I woke up like it was any other day. Left my husband and our two, at the time, 5-year-olds at the house, getting breakfast ready. My husband asked me what he wanted or what I wanted him to do while I was gone. And I said, start the laundry. So, it was just a normal day at the house. I took our 5-week-old daughter with me, went to the gas station, was going to the store, and was swarmed by 15 federal marshals. Wow. At gunpoint. So,
wasn't your ordinary day, right?
No, not at all. And I, of course, was convinced that they had the wrong person, and it was this whole big ordeal. But yeah, you start out one day thinking this is going to be a regular day, and everything gets flipped upside down on its head after that.
And then fast forwarding to 16 months after that, that was where you got sort of yanked out of the community,
yanked out of the world. And it took me a really long time to even be able to go back to the gas station, right? Because it was so unexpected. Had no idea. I'm doing my normal things, and that happens. So there was a lot of just like internal reservation about even going to do normal things in life again. After having that experience.
Wow. And so the experience of being in there for 16 months, like if you could summarize that.
Yeah, I mean, so I hesitate to like, incarceration is not a solution, and it's horrible in all aspects. But I can't say that I didn't gain some positive things from it either,
Yeah.
because I met some good people. I learned some good lessons. You know, I mean, overall, I wish I had never had the experience, but I'm also thankful for the experience.
Interesting. Yeah.
So there's always that. You know, I probably could have got the similar type of experience in a totally different way, but
Yeah.
that was what was meant for me, I
That's
guess.
what was meant
So
for you, yeah.
that's what happened, and yeah, but it's a weird. You know, a couple of the girls in there, I would often talk about living off grid. You know, like that's a big concept out in our world today for people wanting to live sustainably and all of that stuff. Being in prison is a whole nother type of living off the grid, right?
Yeah,
like
literally.
just the contrast
Yeah.
of what does living off of the grid means. And for people who are incarcerated or have been, it's, yeah, you're off in everyone's radar, put away,
banished out there. I mean, how far was your prison from society? Like,
so let's see, I was in 2 different prisons. The way the women's prison worked in the state I was in, you went to like intake prison first, and then select few stayed there, and others went on to the other prison, and I went on to the other prison. The first place was very, very far away from everything. I had lived in that state for my whole life and never even heard of that town, you know, so that's kind of how
far away it was from.
Yeah. The other was actually much closer to a small town, but still out in the middle of nowhere in that town.
Yeah, which makes it very challenging for anybody to come visit. And, you know.
Yeah, to have my son brought up there, it was 4 hours, you know, one way.
Yeah.
So
how often would your son come visit?
He would come once a month.
Once a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was really important to him. You know, he had been with me almost every second of every day of his whole life up until that point. Yeah. So.
You also had a daughter that was taken from you at the moment of arrest too, right?
Yeah. So she'll be now 2 in a couple of weeks, but my at the time 5-week-old daughter.
5-week-old.
Yeah, she was 5 weeks old. So when I was first taken into the prison, I wasn't booked in and put in a cell yet.
Yeah.
They kind of had me in a holding room with her, and I gave them all the information for my in-laws to come pick her up and everything. But yeah, they ended up taking her into foster care.
But when you think about that, 5 weeks old, right? You're a newborn. You've just come out of the womb. You're just freshly born. You're on your mother's chest. You're in, you know, and for them to take a child like that away from its mother, like something's really wrong about just that in and of itself.
Well, and honestly, you know, and I again kind of like being in prison where there's in and of itself it's a bad system and bad conditions, but I had a good experience. Same thing with different law enforcement. You know, I mean, there's a lot of problems in that industry, I guess you could say, but I can't say that all are bad, right? But in this instance, for me, I was lied to in a lot of ways, especially when it came to me giving her over. You know, I mean, I wasn't necessarily going to have a choice at some point.
So what was that process?
Yeah. So, well, like I said, I was just kind of sitting in a holding room. They were going to go to the house. My husband also had a warrant. We both had warrants we were unaware of, basically because we had taken our children out of the state of Missouri. So to not get too complicated, but prior to my husband and I getting together, we each had a child from a previous relationship that we had joint custody of within that. So because we left the state with them, and my stepdaughter's mother got upset about that at some point because we were dealing with a whole custody thing with her, a missing persons report was filed, and that put all of this into motion. But again, we had no idea that any of it was going on. So because of that, these warrants got put out for us. We were not informed. They were kept under seal. So like I said, we were completely caught off guard. But so I was taken from the gas station, and another team went to the house to arrest my husband and take our other 2 children. So what I was told was I was being held until that happened, and then they were going to bring the other 2 children to be with me also, because obviously it was going to be a traumatic thing for them, and they knew that they would need their mother and all of this stuff. So none of that is what happened at all. I don't know, it was maybe 30 minutes after I had been in this room that an officer came in and said, the federal marshals were requesting me come to the house. So I kind of had to make a really tough decision because at first I said, well, I'm not going unless I can take my daughter. You know, she's 5 weeks old and I'm not just going to give her to anybody, right?
Your daughter was with you at that point.
She was with me, yeah. I had her in a body carrier. She slept through all of this. I mean, thank God. But yeah, so I first said, you know, I'm not going unless she can go with me. And they said for safety reasons they didn't want her to go. And so I really had to make a tough decision in that moment. Do I stay with her until I can ensure that someone is coming to pick her up? Or do I go and try to do whatever is needed because I was not informed at all about what was happening, why I needed to go to the house, anything like that. And I made the decision, you know, to go try to take care of the other members of my family based on the fact that I sat down with a gentleman from CPS and he promised me he would call my in-laws who I'd given the phone number for. That never happened. And in fact, the next day, so fast forward past some of these aspects, but the next day I was taken out of my cell into court where, again, I had not been told anything that was going on. Even I had been taken to the scene twice, mind you. Yeah. I was taken out there. It was a big mess. They said they didn't need me. They sent me back. Mind you, this was like a 45-minute drive each way.
Wow. Okay.
We pulled into the bay back at the police station, and they called and wanted me back. So we drove it right back out. Okay. So this and
where was your daughter throughout this whole time?
She had been taken into foster care.
So there was somebody in foster care taking care of a 5-week-old.
Yeah. So the gentleman that I met with took her. Come to find out later, they actually took her to the hospital, did a well check on her, and then they put her in with. You know, the foster care system has a variety of different levels of people who take kids long-term, or this is like an emergency short-term. So she got put in with like a short-term family.
And how was that for you? That must have been so.
I mean, on top of the other things I was dealing with, horrendous, because like not having any control over my situation anyways, but over my 5-week-old, where this family isn't her family. I can't guarantee that they care enough to make sure that her blanket's not on her face or this, you know, like it's just not in any way an ideal situation. So yeah, it was horrific. I mean, just absolutely horrific. And I wasn't able, you know, because of everything going on, they weren't letting me make a phone call. So I wasn't even able to like try to get a hold of my in-laws so that they knew, so I could ensure that they were getting on the plane. Cause I, you know, wasn't sure that the people were actually calling. And yeah, it was just a really horrible mess. But yeah, and so I didn't even find out where she had gone and what had happened to my other family members.
Bro, we're on tape.
So I hadn't even found out what had happened. My husband actually ended up being shot and killed. I didn't know that, or that my in-laws hadn't been called till the next morning. They pulled me out of my cell, took me into a courtroom, which was not even like court for me. It was, they had filed a neglect charge on me in family court because I didn't have anyone to pick up my daughter.
They filed a neglect charge on you, okay.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have anybody to pick up your daughter. Wow.
Right.
On top of everything else.
Despite the fact that I was arrested and I obviously wasn't planning on that to happen. And I did actually have, my in-laws were flying. I finally got a hold of them. They were in flight when they were told that they were not going to give my daughter to any family right now. So despite actually having family and all of this, yes, I was taken into court, given a neglect charge. And actually in that courtroom was also the first time I had heard that my husband had been killed. Because, the person on the opposing side went up for the state and said, since the mother is incarcerated and the father is deceased. And that was the very first time that I had heard.
So throughout this whole process, like how long was that before you actually found out?
That would have been a little over 24 hours. 24
hours. So
yeah.
Wow, what a 24-hour time period.
And again, like I said, I had no idea. I'm sitting in my cell awake all night, and you're in these cells, you have no idea what time it is. There's no light of any sort from the outside world. So you can't even, tell when night has actually come. But the state that I'm in, I'm separated from my family, having to give my 5-week-old daughter to I'm in just like the most ridiculous state you can imagine. And I have so I'm just sitting in this room by myself with a blanket and a mat staring at the wall. And that's all you can do.
That's all you can do. Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
So how did you cope with that? Like, what happened?
I mean, honestly, I don't know how I cope. I mean, looking back on it, I can remember just looking at all of the weird drawings people had made on the walls and, trying to sort through in my head what could be going on, what might be going on next, like it's just literally, again, I probably looked insane, honestly, to the people that were on camera, but I'm just literally sitting there staring at the wall and my head is just spinning, and there wasn't anything I could do. I honestly don't know how I was able to, a lot of crying, obviously, but holding it together in those moments, I don't know. and not by my own power, that's for sure.
Yeah. And like, just based on that experience, like how could they have done that differently given your situation?
I mean, first of all, unfortunately, a lot of the justice system is politics, and my daughter was taken into foster care and then later down the road basically used as a pawn to get me to take a deal. And if she had gone to family when she was supposed to, first of all, I would have been a lot less stressed throughout the whole process. But I also would have taken my case to trial,
Yeah.
And so it's...
So your daughter was kind of held as kind of ransom.
Basically, yeah. So honestly, I was fighting the neglect charge because that just was ridiculous in all aspects, especially when I had given them information of people to call that they chose to not, and I had got a hold of them and they got on the next plane they possibly could.
Yeah.
And my son was able to be given to his father and my stepdaughter was able to be given to her mother. So it's like, why is my 5-week-old daughter not able to be given to all of these people who could take her? So I was fighting that. Finally, I had to give in on that because since I had chosen to fight that locked everything up again in the family court, and then I couldn't further her going home. And then, the county that was prosecuting me, which was separate from the county where I was taken into custody. So from where she was taken into foster care, I had to work through them because they were connecting with this county like, hey, we don't want you to give her to family, because they knew they listened to the phone calls. They know I'm talking about it to family. Like, I'm constantly worried about where she is, what she's doing, like how do we get her to family. So they knew what they needed to get me to take that deal.
Yeah.
And of course I'm going to do that.
Of course
for her.
You're going to do
Like whatever amount of time that it was going to require of me just to be able to have her. Now I will say the family she finally ended up with, she had 2 like emergency stopover families before she got put with one family. They were great, and I'm thankful for that because that's not the case in every situation with foster care. You hear so many horror stories, but the family that she got put with was actually really great, and so I'm very thankful for that. But it still wasn't family,
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, I was going to do whatever I had to do to get her to family. And I wasn't able to communicate with my son through the whole length of my jail stay either, which was...
And so where was he at this point?
He ended up going. So him and my stepdaughter were also taken to a foster family immediately that day. But later, my son's father and my mother, and then my stepdaughter's mother, were able to come pick them up. So he was with his father and my mother, his grandmother, but he had watched his stepfather be killed, and he had been forcibly separated from his mother, who he spent every waking minute with, and had no idea where I was. He thought I was dead for a while until we finally realized that. And my mom and his dad were able to tell him, like, mom's okay, but I still, because of the courts, he was my victim because I took him out of the state. I was not able to talk to him.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, there's another layer of it where my daughter was somewhere I didn't want her to be, but I also wasn't able to comfort my son, and so I had to do
you're
what I
locked up in a prison, and it's like, oh my god.
and a
So
whole
what
new,
a-
like, you know, I've
Yeah.
never been in jail or prison
Yeah.
for any reason, so a whole crazy, ridiculous new experience. I have no idea how anything works, or you know what to expect, or how to even like utilize the intercom buttons to get things that you might need, which is not even reliable anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just in like a super intense traumatic state, having to like try to learn all of that stuff and navigate it was ridiculous. And I will say, the first where I was arrested, that prison, or that jail rather, that I was held in, a lot of the officers were very, very kind. You know, like there was one officer that I can remember that obviously saw like how horrible of a state I was in, and she brought me some books from the library. And you know, one of the sergeants ended up helping me get my food figured out because I don't eat meat, and so it was like there was a lot of good people in there trying to help. So I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah. Wow. So that was the beginning, sort of.
That
Right
was just the beginning.
So,
yeah.
And there was about 16 months in there. And
So
then,
yeah, I spent about 5 months in jail between three jails. So the jail that I was arrested and held in, then they took me. I spent a month there, and of course I'm naive in thinking that because I was out of state, so they were having to transport me back to the state and the county where they were prosecuting me. And I was naive in thinking like, well, they'll be here like in a day or two, you know. No,
Yeah.
they waited. Actually, they waited almost a day past when they legally are required to pick me up before I was going to go to court on Monday, and the county where I was being held was going to release me on, you know, the good merit that I would go turn myself in down there.
Yeah.
But Friday, like at the last minute, they picked me up. So I mean, and you know, looking back, I know all of that strategic now. Like they're gonna make you sit as long as possible. The longer they stress you out and make you sit, the more likely you're like, okay, I'll take the deal. Let me go on.
Right.
So yeah, so I was there for a month, and then when I got down to the other jail, I was there for 4 months, going through the whole process of deciding, am I going to go to trial? You know, they had multiple charges on my warrant at first. They dropped some of those. You know, it's this whole back and forth process. Ended up taking the deal so that I could, because I was never given a bond. Zero, zilch, nothing. No option to at all possibly get out. Which was very frustrating for multiple reasons,
Absolutely.
but that was just another way to kind of force me into doing something that they wanted me to do, because it's not fun to sit in there, right? And if you've never been in jail or prison, you learn from people that have. Prison's way better than jail. So the faster you can get out of jail, even if that means your next stop is prison, the next stop is then home, right? And so so I finally took my deal, got shipped to the prison, and literally as I'm getting dropped off, the woman transporting me said, hey, just so you know, another county is going to come pick you up. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Yeah. So I received a Class E felony, lowest felony possible, for interference with child custody in the county that I had just been taken from to prison, for removing my son from the state. My own son, who I had joint custody of, removed him from the state. That's what I got. So then this other county that was going to come pick me up was the county that my stepdaughter's custody agreement was in. So now I was going to be charged with the same thing in a different county.
In a different county, right?
Yeah. Wow. So I finally, you know, I'm like, okay, I made it to prison. Finally, you know, my attorney had told me he'd called all the people he needed to find out this information. I'd probably be in there 6 weeks and out, right? You know, released on parole. So no, then I instead get taken, I don't know, it was like maybe 2 weeks, get taken to this other county. Now, fortunately, my attorney had worked it out beforehand that I was going to plea on the same charge, and it was going to run concurrent with my current charge. So that wasn't necessarily going to put too much more time on, but I still had to go to the county. I still had to be in front of the judge. That was another month.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I was naive thinking, okay, well, and my attorney kind of was misinformed as well, but he was basically like, you're going to get taken over there, see the judge this day, then you'll be taken right back. Again, not the case. That was a month later. And this jail, I mean, all the jails themselves were horrible, but this one was particularly horrible. While I was in there, 2 women tried to jump off the top tier and commit suicide. The girls are just like up screaming all night long. It was just, yeah, horrific. And again, like, okay, I finally felt like maybe the air had cleared in my head a little bit. And that was a really hard time going back in there. But then again, I finally made it back to the prison. And then, yeah, total wise, 16 months. So it was about 10 months later that I spent in the prison that I was released.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess, you know, there's so many stories we could talk about, just your experience in jail and your experience in prison, but was there anything in there, like, was there an individual you connected with, a formerly incarcerated woman that you want to share about your experience that was meaningful? Or
yeah, so anything? I mean, I connected with a ton, honestly, and I wish I could share each of their stories, but I mean, the one that made the biggest impact on me, because it was the deepest time of need, was a girl named Amanda. And this was in the county that originally prosecuted me, so the place where I spent 5 months in jail. And she's now in federal prison. She had spent a couple of years in county, which I cannot even imagine spending a couple of years in county jail. But she went through that and is now finishing up. She has a 14-year sentence. She'll end up spending about 6 years in the federal prison before she's put into a transition house and then released. But she had a couple of experiences with jail and prison, and she was like the mama hen of the pod that I was in. And she just really, I mean, such a wonderful woman. She has the mother heart. She has 6 kids, but she just took me under her wing and cared for me in ways that I cannot repay back, honestly. Just emotionally helping me in moments when I'm crying and I can't even figure out why or what to do about it. She helped me, you know, figure out how to function in the jail. And
so she was a true friend.
Absolutely. Yep. And I communicate with her. It's interesting, in the federal prison, like, they can text straight to your phone. So I can text her just like I would any other person.
She gets it on her
She gets it on whatever tablet she has, but it's quick. And like, when I was in the prison, we could email, but it would take like a day or 2 between each correspondence to get sent. This is like I said, texting anybody else, so it's really kind of interesting. So yeah, I keep in touch with her, and now I feel like I can repay her. In that moment, I couldn't do anything for her. Like, I gave her some commissary food or whatever, but like, in that moment, I was just in need and she was right there to hold my hand. But now I'm in a place where I can keep lifting her up, and that's really great. But there's countless women like that in there that are just helping other people out.
How about a relationship with a guard or some of the staff in there?
So
something that stands out?
There was, in the jail specifically that I, again, spent the 5 months in, there was a couple guards who were just very sweet women, because I don't know, they see and deal with all of what's going on in there too, and they understand when someone's like in there maybe not for a good reason, or don't belong there. I got that a lot. Like, one of the first guards I interacted with when I got to the prison was like, "You don't belong here." It's like, no, I sure don't, but here I am, and it's sweet, because a lot of them then are like invested in, oh, it's your release day, or like, hey, how much longer you got, or I haven't seen you in a while, what happened? And
they're kind of looking out for you.
Kind of keeping tabs on it. And just there's a lot of guards who are rough, to interact with for a variety of reasons. But so the ones that you get that like really have a heart, you know, and realize the situation you're in and, you know, converse with you like a human, like that makes a really big difference.
That makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that. And then you had an experience in there with the gardening program. You want to share a little
Oh
bit about
yeah,
that?
so that was like my saving grace. So every prison has different programs that they offer, vocational, college, you know, certain things like that. The one I was in had 3 or 4 vocational programs affiliated with a vocational school in that town. And one of them was a professional gardening and landscaping program, which right away piqued my interest because that's something, you know, I farmed in my past, and I was like, okay, I need to be around plants and outside because we didn't, you know, we had rec times in prison, which was way more than we got in jail, but it's still very controlled and very limited. And if you work this schedule, you might not ever even get to get out into rec. So that was like, okay, here's an extra way I can be outside, right? So I signed up, was fortunate enough to get in, and yeah, I went through the program. And while I actually was still finishing up the program, I was able to start there was 2 tutors in the class, so I was able to tutor and kind of help take care of the whole garden and the greenhouse. And that was wonderful because I got to water the greenhouse. Days we didn't have class, like on the weekends or holidays, someone would have to go water the greenhouse, and I got to do that. And that was the only time I got to be by myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have to have a guard in there with me. There's no other inmates in there with me. It was just me and the plants, and that was like absolutely what kept me sane.
Beautiful. Yeah, because you have a deep love for nature and
absolutely. Well, and getting to, you know, it's so weird the things that they don't allow you to do in jail and prison. And if I hadn't been in the class, even sitting on the ground is a no-go, right? So the fact that I was able to kneel down and pull weeds or plant things or pick stuff, just sit on the ground, you know,
yeah. Was it food you were growing? Or?
Yeah, so we grew. It was summer basically whenever I was in the program. So it was. I think I started the program in June and I went all the way till I left in December. Okay. So when I first came in, it was the main summer growing season. So we had tomatoes, cucumbers, all kinds of things, and it was fun because a lot of the women who were in the program, it was like the first time they'd ever eaten like something right off the vine.
Really?
And we did get to actually eat the things that we picked. So we would give some things to the culinary program that was there, but we would get to sample. And so I mean that was another thing. It was like, again, a moment of like normalcy where we picked some stuff, we're all kind of sitting around together eating it, and you know it made a huge difference.
It made a huge difference. Yeah.
Huge difference.
Yeah. And so then sort of fast forwarding a bit here, so you're out now and you've been out for 6 months. And so
6 months. That seems crazy.
Seems crazy, yeah. So can you just describe how things have been for you since you got out?
So December was when I got out, and that month was kind of like a weird whirlwind. It was like getting reacquainted with life. And honestly, like I wasn't incarcerated that long in the grand scheme of many people who come out after 10, 20, 30 years. Yeah. But even that short amount of time was so disorienting that I would like leave the water running in the bathroom. Like I had a couple friends who came to stay with me for about a couple days, and they were following around turning stuff off. You know, it's just like little things that you kind of don't forget how to do, but you just get conditioned basically into what's happening in that artificial setting that you're placed in. And so everything was really kind of weird and overwhelming and emotional. You know, we went to the store I only had the clothes on my back when I came out, so we went to the store to get clothes, and I'm like crying in the sock aisle because there's too many options to pick from. You know, it took a little bit to adjust, but I also had that feeling in the back of my head that like, okay, I gotta like jump back out and do stuff because I lost all this time. So I was really eager to be like, what's next? My whole life had been shaken up, ripped out from under me, blown apart, and then I was put away for 16 months. So now I have all this energy of like, okay, well, I can't just sit here anymore. I've been doing that. What's next, right?
Next? So you hit the ground running and you're just ready for.
But that's kind of stressful too, because then you're still in this I'm still on parole, right? So I can't do certain things. I can't just go anywhere I want to go. I can't, there's
Yeah.
lots of things that just are limited. And then again, it's like I'm rebuilding my life, and I have to do that slowly, despite this urgency that I feel.
Right.
But I knew I wanted to get back, being that the earth and growing and plants has always been so healing for me, but was such a lifesaver basically when I was incarcerated. I was determined to jump back into that, and that was my husband's passion as well, and so I wanted to carry that on for us and for our children. And so I immediately found programs that I could get into to gain some more education and get to know gardeners in the area. And then just basically by fate, I found Freedom Farms.
Oh, Freedom Farms, yeah.
Which was perfect.
Yeah, and I remember actually we did a write-up for a newsletter from the Vista Utilities that they give us a small grant, and this interviewer came up and just downloaded everything Freedom Farms does, and I was like, okay, we'll just throw that out there and see what happens. And they sent this mailing out to several thousand families in the communities.
And they wrote a beautiful, I don't know if you ever actually read the article, but it was beautiful. I have it on my board up still. I have a cork board above my desk at the house, and I have it up there just as a reminder.
I got to reach out to the lady who wrote that.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Just to thank her for that. Yeah, it was a very good article.
Yeah, and it's a really funny story because, I had got into this gardening program when I first got out, and so my mother-in-law, who always I'm living with my in-laws currently, and so they get all the mail coming in, and so they got that newsletter. My mother-in-law got it and saw the article and thought, well, this would be great. Lindsey might be interested in this. But in the back of her head, she was also like, well, she's already started this other program. Maybe it's not the time. I don't want to overwhelm her.
Right.
So she had this back and forth of even putting it out for me to see. And thankfully she did.
She just put it out there. Yeah, that was our article.
Yeah.
So, wow. And so then you started working at Freedom Farms. How was that for you? How has it been? And
so, just having the opportunity to have work, first of all, because as much as I would love to not have to worry about money in life, none of us are at that place really. Yeah. So having that need be met by an organization that wants to hire felons, and it's farming and gardening and everything was perfect for me.
Fit,
I mean, just in so many ways. So it was honestly a godsend and a dream come true that it just aligned. And it's funny because when I was in the gardening program in prison, one of the things we had to do was create a business, basically, as our end project to graduate. And I basically created the business that you had also been creating as I was in there. So it really did kind of just line up perfectly. And, I moved out to Oregon, which I'm from Missouri. So that was a big shift. And so for that to be here and me to find it, really it was fate. And I'm so grateful.
Perfect, yeah. And what a perfect fit you are for our program, too. Oh my God.
Thank you. I'm glad.
We were in need of you.
Well, see, exactly. So it was again, it was, it's funny, all that stuff's always being worked out in the background, and you have no idea until it
just sort of
weaves together. Yep. Perfect. I know. I was.
You can't create this stuff.
No. No, and I was joking the other day with my in-laws. I was like, it feels like this was created just for me. And they were like, well, Sean probably feels that way too, and Mike probably feels that way too. And everybody
does.
In the program, this was just created for me. How wonderful. So for everybody to feel that way and have this thing is really, really great. And then I feel something that really was important to me and I was going out of prison was obviously this shook up my life in ways that I could never have imagined, and took me on a totally different trajectory necessarily than what I had planned for my life. But I think there's a reason in that. And the fact that I can now, getting to move into the program manager position with the farm, I can help other people. That's another huge aspect for me, because I met so many wonderful women in prison, and they just need a chance, right? They need help when they come out, if they come out, right? Yeah. And so to be able to also be in a place where I can help, especially now that I'm in a place where when I was in there, I needed help, right? And there's still lots of ways I need help.
Absolutely.
But now I can provide help. That feels really good.
That must feel really empowering. And yeah. And what we offer here at Freedom Farms is is working.
Yep.
We're having people come out and grow food and get their hands in the dirt
Yep.
and be part of this team. Here we are at the farmers market selling our produce
Yep.
that we've grown on the farm. And it feels amazing, doesn't it? Just
Absolutely.
to be at this stage in the process.
Well, and this is an aspect, the farming that I did before. One of the farms I worked at, aside from our personal farm, but one of the farms I worked at did have like a farm stand at their place. But coming to the market has been a whole nother experience. It's just the really wonderful work, though, that it takes to get everything here.
7 vegetables just to get here.
Yeah, it's like we bring a very strategic amount and whatnot, but it's work to get it here. And I think that's something that I love the market atmosphere, because I think the people that come here recognize that. Like the booths that are here, the people that are here have worked really hard to grow this, but then to bring it to you.
They bring it, yes.
And then you get to interact with people. Like I was actually thinking about this as I drove over today. Like somebody's gonna take this kale and eat it today.
Yeah.
Like how cool is that? We're gonna meet the person, and they're gonna get to meet the person that grew it.
Yeah.
You don't get that when you go to the store.
No, you don't. And people don't even know your name at the store in most cases. But here people remember you. And
exactly. And come back, because they really liked you or what you grew or just the conversation that you had.
And you're a perfect example of you're not the stereotypical looking
I'm glad.
formerly incarcerated person, right? And so folks are often surprised when they see you. They're like, even when they're talking to me afterwards, they're like, really? No way.
Yeah.
I thought she was just a volunteer or
right.
something. So you don't fit that bill of being the stereotypical.
Which I enjoy, because then it's always like, I don't know, that feels good for me on a personal level, because I never would have expected to go to prison, but also on the level of, well, I want people to know that people like me are in prison too.
Yeah.
And
that it's not just,
it's not just these people you think are in prison. And even those people who you think, fit that stereotypical bill, they've had something happen in their life most of the time. The people who are just out there doing really bad things for no good reason are very few and far between.
That's right.
Most people in there, they need help with something, and that need didn't get met, and they went down this long spiral where one bad decision put them somewhere, or an addiction, or a trauma, or being put in a situation they had no other option. I think it's good for people to see unlikely people who ended up in prison, because it could be them next, or their family member, or it really doesn't take much.
And just to kind of close it up with just the reconnection with your daughter, because we kind of started off with what happened, but how was it?
Well, I was a nervous wreck, because as a mother, I'm like, she's gonna forget me. Every day that ticked by that was like gonna be longer than I had been with her, like that stressed me. That line of, okay, well, now today she's been away from me longer than she's been with me. Like I was really having a hard time with that and then it way surpassed that, where we were apart for 16 months. She was 5 weeks old, and
she never came to, or she wasn't able to come visit?
No, I did have a few video visits with her, which was really wonderful, but and my in-laws and my brother-in-law specifically too, who she ended up he was her guardian after we finally got her out of foster care. Like they all continuously showed my picture and her dad's picture, and so she was aware, but she's a baby,
exactly.
And a lot of that connection comes from like physical contact at that point. So I was a nervous wreck that she wasn't going to know me, and I was going to be really like, I'm going to be so excited to see her, but she's not going to know me, and then that's going to like really drop me down. But that is not at all what happened. She knew it was honestly, it was like, oh, Mom, there you are. I've been waiting on you.
Oh,
She was let's see, she's about to turn 2 now. So she was just about under 18 months old whenever I got out. And the day after I got out, my brother-in-law brought her over, and he walked through the door holding her, put her down. She came right over to me, let me pick her up and hold her. And I've been with her ever since. So she stayed with me that night.
I remember when we first met, she was literally glued to your body, like you just couldn't.
No, she knew. She knew who I was. She knew that we were back together, and we have had 0 issues of connection at all. And so I can't promise everybody coming out of prison that that's how it's going to be, but like that gave me such a wonderful understanding of how important like that first 5 weeks even was. That initial connection that we had lasted a lifetime. And not to say she might not have some issues come up later down the road from that separation point. Like it does make a bigger impact than people realize.
Yeah.
But she knew me. She knows that we're back together. She knows mommy. She even knows daddy, even though he's not here.
So she remembers. And,
I have his pictures hanging up, and actually on Father's Day the other day, she goes, "Hi, Dad."
Aw, really?
So just out of the blue.
So not a good ending to a horrible story in a certain way.
Yeah.
In the sense that she's reunited with you.
Yep. And I've actually been able to visit my son already.
Nice.
So I went. I flew back to Missouri. Fortunately, since I am an unlikely formerly incarcerated person and don't have a record, I was put on like really low supervision parole.
Yeah.
So traveling, I still have to get a permit for it, but I can do it. So I flew back to Missouri in March when my son was on spring break. Got to see him for a week.
Beautiful.
We talk every day, and hopefully here in another couple months I'll go back and visit him.
Wow. So in many ways it's sort of a happy ending to a horrible situation, right? I mean, not a happy ending as in everything's perfect or anything, but
a lot of pieces have fallen back together, that weren't there before. We still, my stepdaughter, we still haven't got to be able to have communications with her, but I trust that when the time is right, that will happen. It's really hard to wait, but I trust that'll happen. And, my husband's not here physically, but he's with us in spirit, and I get to have interactions with, I live with his parents, his brother, is around. So I get to interact with them, and that's helpful for me, but for my daughter as well, who, is missing her dad.
Yeah.
They're here.
They're here.
Yep.
Wow, so beautiful.
Yep.
Thank you, Lindsey, so
You're
much
welcome.
for sharing that with us. And there's going to be many more of these interviews to come, but this is our first one.
Yep.
We're digging right into this issue here at the farmers market here. This is Voices Unchained. Getting that voice out, releasing, telling these stories that need to be told. I mean, we all have a story, but there are stories behind bars that really need to be told. These people have gone through some amazing and traumatic experiences. So thank you so much.
Thank you.